So you got a flat tire on your moped. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is take the rear brake cable off by loosening this this bolt right here. There it goes, it just pops right out. Now I'm going to take the 2 axle bolts off. You need 1 wrench on either side. And it's 1 long bolt, so you move the wrenches opposite to each other. And then once they're loose enough, you can just do it by hand. You don't need to take them all the way off. Just get them loose enough so that the wheel slides. These are the tensioners. You just flip them out of the way. And then you can give the wheel a little tap forward. And at this point, the chain is really loose. And you can just derail the chain by moving it to the side and spinning the wheel until it pops off. Okay, so let the chain hang out of the way. And you can give the wheel a little tap forward until it falls out of the dropouts. So now your wheel is off. You can choose to leave the bolts on or off if they're getting in your way by rattling around. You can just take them off. Take the parts off in order so you remember how to put them back on when you go to reassemble your wheel. You have the axle nut, a washer, chain tensioner, and the entire brake assembly. And then the other axle, the other side of the axle, just slides out in one piece. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is take the valve cap off and a little bolt holding it on, and use my tire irons to take off this tire. So the way I like to do it is you get 1 iron under the bead and flip it over, and then if you go to either direction, either side, find the point where it's just kind of hanging over the rim, and before it goes all the way down and touches, you can find this nice little spot where you can grab it again. And you flip that over, take it out, and try to put pressure down so the bead doesn't just kind of fall back into the rim. You move over farther, push the valve through with your finger, and get the tube out. And this tube is garbage. Take a new tube. And there's going to be a washer and a bolt and then a second bolt. You leave the washer and the first one on and you take this one off. These guys are going to hang out inside the tire, and this one is going to be on the outside. Any regular bike pump you have at home is going to work fine. Give it a little bit of air, just enough so that it barely holds its shape. And this is what you're going to want when you're installing the tire. So before you put it back on, you want to find out, why did my tire go flat? So you take the whole tire off and inspect it for any nails or anything that you could have picked up, and then make sure there's no debris or anything in the rim. So most tires have an arrow on it. It says rotation. So make sure you get that correct with the rotation of your wheel. So you put the first half of the bead on, and the bead is this part of the tire. It's actually filled with like a coiled wind of metal or Kevlar or something like that. And then the way I like to do this is you just put the partially inflated tube, just kind of shove it in there. And then first thing you do is put the valve in and you just got to kind of find the hole that the valve is going to go into. There it goes. And the bolt that came off of it originally. The way I like to do it is I start opposite the valve, and you can just start making sure that when you're flipping the bead over the rim, just make sure you're not pinching the tube anywhere, because that's the way you're going to pop it. So keep flipping it over, work it towards the valve. You want the valve to be the last part of the bead that you're going to flip over. So when you get to a point when you're not strong enough to keep flipping this thing over the rim, then you take your tire iron out. And what I like to do is hold the tire away from the rim with my fingers from the other side. And when I put the iron on the rim, get your fingers in there and make sure you're not pinching the tube with the iron. And then go ahead and flip it over. And then don't just rip it out after you've gone in there. You want to make sure that you can come out without pinching the tube. It's really crucial. And there you go. It's on. You also want to make sure that your tire is seated all the way around. You can see the edge of the bead on the inside of the rim, and if there's any spaces where you can clearly tell that it's sucked into the inside of the rim, then your tire has not been seated. And you need to deflate it and re-inflate it until it seats itself. And this looks fine, so I'm going to go ahead and start putting things back together. The brake assembly has a slot right here, and it usually lines up with a bolt that's sticking out of the inside of the swing arm so that it's locked in and it can't spin around. You want to make sure when you're installing the wheel that you put it in the correct location, because if you miss the little bolt and you hit the brakes, this thing is just going to spin around with your wheel and it's going to ruin it. So make sure you get this slot lined up. So the axle, the brake assembly, chain adjuster, and the washer and the nut. Put these on loosely so you have enough room to get it into the rim. Take your chain and rail it, and then put your chain tensioner back on with the little nub facing outwards. So the way it works is actually, you can see it gets bigger and it slides the wheel forward and back. Take your washer. Same thing on the other side. You have the same 3 pieces again. And now you can use these chain tensioners to actually move the wheel. You can see that it rotates when I adjust it. And what you want is you want to have the wheel straight with the bike, and at the same time you want to have the perfect tension on the chain. And the chain wants to have about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of play. So that feels about right to me. And then you have to make sure your wheel's straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tension one and loosen the other, and that will bring the wheel over. And you do those at the same time, and you do it properly, you can move the wheel over and keep the tension at the proper amount, which is 1/2 to 1 inch. Alright, so I feel like I'm pretty centered here, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the axle bolts. Alright, looks good to me. The last thing you want to do before you ride off is don't forget that we did take off the rear brake cable. So install that, and the way I like to do this is get the bolt ready to be tightened but still loose enough so that the cable will slide in there. Squeeze the assembly shut with your fingers and then let off 1/4 inch, and then go ahead and tighten it. And then you have a small adjuster here, and there's usually an adjuster up at your handlebar level, and you can fine-tune where you like your brakes, if you like to be able to squeeze them a lot before they engage or just a little bit. So just double check and make sure that it's the way you like it. Feels fine to me. And there you go, you've changed your tire.